Okay, well, this is Thursday, and I'm still tied up doing taxes. It usually takes me about 3 days, and I got 2 days into it. And it's about 1 o'clock. I just got back from the Old Farts, PHARTZ lunch, and I thought I'd have a little fun. This is my puppy. That's Spunky, and this is my lady friend's puppy, Susu, and she is off on a trip, so I'm taking care of her puppy Susu, who's just being weird. Okay, so anyway, I thought I'd take a few minutes just to get away from the desk, away from the taxes, and talk about the modification that I do for the vent of the sump. Now, like I showed you in the previous video, the sump comes up here and goes into this Y tube, and then half of it goes out the back end of the bike and half of it comes here to the oil tank. And this Y tube is magic. Apparently it's blessed at the factory, and it knows to send vapor up here, oil up here, and then vapor out the back, all by itself, and it doesn't work. So what I do is I take this Y connector out and run the sump vent from under the engine all the way up here and directly into the oil tank, which would then pressurize the oil tank. So what I do here is I put the cap on tight, and I mark center and that away. And I'm going to take this cap and modify it and put a vent tube on it so that the oil and pressure will come here, go into the tank, and then the pressure will be released out the back of the motorcycle, like later models did. So what you need is just take your 50-foot coil of 1/4-inch diameter tubing and go up to your local friendly hardware store and buy yourself a barb like this. Okay, so that's your starting point. You've got your cap, you've got it marked. This is the fitting that's going to go in here, and this is the tubing that fits the fitting very nicely. Goes on there very nicely. That's our starting point. So now that I've got this far, I'll set things up and we'll do the modification. Okay, so I've got the cap here, and I'm going to do a center punch right in the center here where I marked it. Okay, and I'll do a small pilot hole. Oh, that drill's a little wiggly there. I'm going to go all the way through. Really, there's enough room around the edge for it to vent, but I go all the way through. Whoa, that went fast. Okay. Now I'm going to use a step drill to make a bigger hole. Okay. And we're going to go big enough to put this threaded area into the cap. Sir, my shop teacher, back from good old Washington Lee High School, would give me grief over this. Now, since I know I'm doing this terrible style, terrible fashion, please don't tell me I'm doing this terrible style, terrible fashion. Not the world's greatest battery. Battery is dated 2021. I think it's time for a few new ones. Okay, that's the breakthrough we want. The other side, that's plenty of a hole. So we're going all the way through. Still flexible. Okay, we'll get ready for step 2. I'm going to go clean this top of the wire wheel. Clean it really, really clean. I'll be right back. All right, so when I go to clean it, I'm going to lose my marks. So I'm just going to scribe 2 different places here. And that'll leave these here as a direction to put the vent on. All right, I've got this all shiny, bright, and clean. And I have the fitting over here. What I'm going to do now is shorten this threaded area a little bit, because I want this to go in here like this and still leave room for this part to compress down on the spring to do the seal. Okay, now right now, if I cut this hole out extra large, it would just fit around it. But I'm just going to cut this down. It's almost enough room, so I'm going to cut about that much off of this and just solder it into the top. Okay, so I'm going to cut this much off and solder it into the top. I think right here are my marks. So I'm going to do it on there facing that way. I think I'm going to come up with a spacer to hold it level. Hang on. I'll be back. Well, I messed up. Made a mistake. I drilled this hole too large. I should have drilled it, stopped at the last step on the step drill, and then opened it up manually to fit the fitting, or taken the fitting and ground down the threads a little bit so that they would fit into the tighter hole. I didn't do that. I went one step too far, and it just got in there rattling around like a baby in a bent rain barrel. So I went into my box of washers, and I found one that fits. It's screwed on here nicely, and it will now sit in here flat. And I'm going to solder the whole thing on all at once. So I'm going to line it all up, and what I'm going to do, first of all, I got my 2 marks here, so it's going to go in facing that way. I'm going to take my X-Acto knife, and what I do, even though I've cleaned all this, I'm going to go here and I'm going to scratch it. Give the solder more to grab onto. I'm a great believer in scratching surfaces, making it as easy as possible for the solder to grab. Let's see if this will take a bit of solder before I try to do this. I may even put solder on here. Let's see if it'll take it. I'm going to try this really thin solder that I use for electrical work. If it doesn't flow nicely, I've got some solder over there that I use for other purposes. It seems to be flowing nicely. My microphone battery's dead, so I can't use that. That's a nice bed of solder. Let's put some solder on here, and then we'll plop it down onto that. It would be just like me to grab this with my hand. Done it before. Let's take this and put a bit of solder around here. It does a double job. It solders, gives me a better solder on that washer, and it also solders the washer to the fitting, so I don't have to worry about that. It's going all the way around. All right. I'm going to let both of these cool, then I'm going to clean them off, then I'm going to put them together and apply heat and hope that they connect with each other and give me a nice tight seal. I'll be back in a minute. All right, let's see what happens. Both parts have cooled down. Got a good coat of, let's see, solder in here all the way around. Good coat of soldering over here all the way around. This guy gets on here facing my two little notches like this. And theoretically, I'm going to heat it up and it's going to just melt together. I think it's called sweat soldering. And we'll see how it goes. Here we go. Well, that went well, so I've salvaged that, and I'll let it cool and I'll put it on the bike. And the only question in my mind is, since I used that washer underneath of it, it's a little taller than I usually make them, and we'll see if it clears the seat underneath. If it does, great. If it doesn't, I get to do it again. So we'll find out. In the meantime, there it sits, ready to go, and that was fun. Now I'm going to go in there and go back to working on my taxes. All right, a little bit of follow-up. I soldered this together, and I used MAP gas, which is really hot. I could have just as easily used propane, because there sits the bottle of propane, but I had the torch on the MAP gas, so I used the MAP gas. Okay, so I did use MAP gas, but propane would work just fine. Now, if on the other hand you're not comfortable soldering and you don't want to solder something like this together, here's an alternative. It's JB Weld Marine Weld. This stuff is really strong. I've used up all mine. I just bought this, so I know this stuff is really, really strong. And you could put this whole deal together using epoxy, and it would hold up just fine, thank you very much. So if you don't want to solder, use some good epoxy. Prior to using this, I bought a couple of jars about that big of the steel and the hardener. I paid about $85 for those two together back in the ever so long ago. And when I finally used them all up, I went to get another two containers, and they were like $180. And now I would be afraid to even ask. That stuff was so strong, you advertised that you could put things together and it would stand up to machining, threading, all kinds of abuse. And that's really neat stuff, but I'm not going to spend that much money anymore. So I use this on stuff I want to hold really tight, and it works really well. So that's where we are. Let's put our 50 feet of tubing away. This guy is perfectly cool now. I'll put him away. Matter of fact, I'll put him on the tank and show him to you. All right, here's the cap in place with the length of vent hose going out the back. And to access the oil, simply pull this off. It does come off just fine. Thank you very much. Take your cap off. Check your oil. Put your cap back on. Tighten it down. And put your vent hose back on it. Easy peasy, and no, you don't need a clamp because there's no pressure. It's just an open hose. So that's there. Now, what I still have to do is get this Y out of here and hook this vent line directly to the line coming from the crankcase. But not today. Not today. I got to get back to doing taxes as much as I don't want to. But they're in there calling my name. Get them done. Get them to the accountant. Get them finished. So that's what I was talking about, and it works really well. And my only concern is, as I said before, if I made that too tall and it strikes the bottom of the seat, I will take it apart and lower it, solder it back together. I'll let you know eventually.